Hey guys, welcome back to Zim Reads. I'm your host Zim, and today we are reviewing a book that sits very comfortably on the Booker 2020 long list. Lots of people are very sure it's going to make the short list, and some people even think it might take the cake of the prize. So I'm going to review it for you today, let you know what I think, give you my thoughts around the book, and I got a little treat for you, something that I did with this one that I haven't done with any other book. We're going to jump into the bookalytics on it. All right, are you guys ready? Do you have your morning beverage? If you're watching this in the evening, do you have your evening beverage? There is a beverage for every hour of the day. Get your beverage, sit down, stand up, do some jumping jacks or star jumps, depending on where you are, and let's get going. We're talking about Girl in White Cotton. It's also known as Burnt Sugar. They are the exact same book, just with different titles. I may use those things interchangeably. If that confuses you, just remember Avni Doshi. Avni Doshi. Girl in White Cotton, Burnt Sugar, same book. Same book. Same book. Let's talk about the book. Okay, so what is it about? What is Girl in White Cotton about? It's a great question because what you'll hear people say this book is about, and what you'll probably read in some kind of synopsis, I was expecting this book to be about memory. I was expecting this book to be a case study into the human mind and the ways that we remember and the ways that we forget, and the impact of our flawed memory systems on our present living. And I was expecting to be just blown away by this concept. I was expecting to be deeply moved and exposed, and I was excited because the concept is powerful. So let me get into it before I digress. Nobody wants to listen to a dude in a pink hat digress. Dude in a pink hat, girl in white cotton. What's this book about? Let me tell you what this book's about. Firstly, I don't really know. What you'll hear people say is, oh, it's about a woman named Antara whose mother is suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and how memories are forgotten, and how that thematically it's about this concept of memory and what makes up our realities and all of that. And I think that all existed in the book on a secondary level. But to me, what the book is about more thematically is the concepts of resentment and anger and narcissism. I think we explore through this book the concepts of memory. And yes, it is true that Antara's mother, who is referred to as Ma throughout this book, is suffering from this disease, Alzheimer's or dementia, and yet that is only really sprinkled throughout. This isn't like a deep dive into the experience of a caregiver and the experience of someone afflicted with this terrible disease and how that impacts family or something. I think that that's secondary. There's so much happening outside of that. We have a first-person narrative here. Antara is a young woman in her 30s that is full of resentment and anger and vitriol, and is trying to make sense of her life. and is very seemingly unhappy with her husband, with the things that have happened in her past that she processes to some degree throughout the narrative. And then her relationship with her parents as well, particularly her relationship with her mother. This book seems to be much more thematically about the concepts of a parent-child, specifically mother-daughter relationship, and the way resentment and anger can unfurl over years, and the impact that that has, I guess, on the present. That's what it's about more thematically for me. One positive thing about this book that I really think kind of claimed its spot on the long list, something that the judges were likely very drawn to, is the fact that Avni Doshi is a superb writer. She is a really good writer. And what I mean when I say a good writer is not necessarily that she is a master novelist, but that she is a very good crafter of words and word flow and how things unfold, and bringing things together and all of that. So I think she does a really, really good job in writing. There are moments where you feel this is poetic. She kind of writes in this conclusive method. She starts with a thought and she kind of explores it, or is telling us a story, and it's all coming to this head at the end of that section or paragraph that has this profound kind of punctuated thought. There are times when she's not really landing the punches, but I don't really fault her because, you're not going to land every punch. She's a great writer. On the other hand, literally, on the other hand, I have coffee, but on the other hand, there was something that for me, for your boy Zim, that for me was missing pretty much throughout. What didn't happen in Doshi's writing for me was I was not moved. I wasn't moved by Girl in White Cotton / Burnt Sugar. I wasn't moved. I was expecting to be deeply moved. I think the reason I read is to be moved. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if I'm expecting too much from the world of literature or these authors or modern authors or what. But I read so that I can be moved and swell with something that exposes myself to myself and helps me make sense of my world. And to me, Doshi doesn't land it doing that. I was expecting to be moved. The concepts around this book that I thought were like, ooh, yes, this is going to be delicious. This is going to be just caramel, just straight caramel. It wasn't. It was like vanilla, which I like vanilla, but it was just kind of, it was good writing. That's what kept me in it. And it was interesting. But, in a novel, I'm not looking for just interesting. I don't read fiction for just an interesting thought. You don't write a novel to just interest people. And I really just only kind of felt interested. The first time that a chapter ended and I felt like, ooh, I gotta keep reading. The first time I experienced that was on page 214. I wrote it down. 214 is the first time I feel like, ooh, that was good. I got to keep going. There's only 273 pages in this book, and on 214 is the first time I felt like a gut punch and was like, Doshi, nice shot. I mean, even the parts where there's like a scene where Ma is starting a fire in her studio, and it's just not like gripping, but it's just kind of like, okay, that's happening right now. Going back into more synopsis, Antara's taking care of her mom, not really, because her mom's kind of living alone, but they bring her for like a weekend and then they send her back, but she's going to the doctor visits with her, and those are the moments that we see some conversation about memory. A lot more of this is going back in time to Antara's past and kind of exploring what happened with her as a kid and her relationship with her mom even then. So when I say that this is thematically more about resentment and anger, that's for a couple reasons. Antara is resentful. From opening line to the last line of this book, Antara is resentful. And that's fine. I'm actually not calling that out as a flaw. I'm calling that out as something that builds my argument for what this is thematically about. Because books don't have to end hopeful or be hopeful throughout, and we don't have to have a narrative that is just fairies and butterflies. So we watch Antara and her mom as they enter the ashram when Antara is a young girl, 6 or 7, and we see this radical kind of, I guess I'll say, charismatic experience that Antara steps into with her mother, and her mother throughout is to me, textbook narcissist. She just looks for ways to punish. She's passive aggressive. She can also just cut, and her words can just like intentionally cut and sting. So not so passive aggressive, just straight up aggressive. And she is constantly comparing herself to her daughter and shaming her daughter to make herself feel better and can't be reasoned with. And so what that does is it sets the stage for us to understand, where is Antara's resentment really coming from. That's one major source, and the history that's there with her mother. Another source is her husband, Dilip, who they got married and had this romantic kind of meeting and things like that. But then what we see of the marriage almost exclusively is indifference. Their relationship isn't vibrant. They're just kind of moving and existing together, and Antara is resentful, I think, because of some other things that I won't give away. But what we see are these glimpses and these sources of resentment. And then Ma's disease and forgetfulness kind of throws another layer on top of that, giving us more reason for Antara to be resentful. But what I think we start to really see is how her resentment and anger, because of her history with Ma, actually renders Antara incapable of being a good caregiver for her mother. And it can almost be said of being a caregiver at all, of even having empathy for her. There seems to be more resentment that surfaces, and that's believable. I think that I can totally see all these sources of Antara's resentment. So that to me is really a lot more of what the book is about. Should this have earned a place on the long list? And I don't know how to answer that question. I know a lot of people are really, really excited about Girl in White Cotton Burnt Sugar, which to me is just a far superior name for the book, Burnt Sugar. Even though we never, I think, once see any sugar burnt. I was expecting to see some burnt sugar in this book. There wasn't, but there were girls in white cotton and lots of people in white cotton. So maybe this is a better name for the book, even though Burnt Sugar just has a more caramelly flavor to it. Did it deserve to even be on the long list? I don't even know if that is a question I've asked about these, and I don't know. It's well written, but it's just interesting. And the banner over this review that you can take away with is Zim wasn't moved. I wasn't moved. There wasn't a moment. There really was not a moment that whelmed me in a way that I would have expected. She had everything on the table that she needed to make this into something that to me was like a grand slam, just knocking it out of the park. And I'm glad it was a quick read and that it was well written and that it was interesting, but I was not moved. I think it's going to make the shortlist. I don't want it to win, especially above How Much of These Hills is Gold. I do not want this book to win. I don't want it to win. Let it be on the shortlist so that we can continue debating about this, but I don't think it will win. If it wins above How Much of These Hills is Gold, then I'll be disappointed. What we're going to do now is jump into the data. Okay guys, here we are over at the data. I promised you data, I promised you milestone ratings, I promised you descriptions. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna jump right into it. Okay, so what did I do? Every 25 pages, I took a poll that gathered this data for me. Every 25 pages of the book, Girl in White Cotton, AKA Burnt Sugar, Longlisted. Here we go, we're gonna jump right into the data. So as you can see, I rated it on a scale of 1 to 10 every 25 pages I read. And so what we get is a very granular perspective of how I experienced the book. And so you can see I started out at a 6, and I kind of progress a little bit as the book goes on. It makes a steady incline up to about page 125. And from there, it starts to make a steady decline because I start getting frustrated. I start waiting, like, when is this just going to pick up? When is it going to get to the point where it's really, really diving in on these themes that I was expecting the book to be about? And it just never does. And it kind of declines back to the point that it started, just kind of an okay experience. And then the end kind of picks up a little bit, drops way down, and then I think the ending was pretty good. The way it ends, her writing at the end, I gave her an 8 at the end there. Now, all of this combined, we take an average of these 11 ratings here, and the average ends up being about 6.8, which I round up to a 7. So that's where I get my score. And moving down here to the descriptions, what does this represent? Well, at every milestone, I didn't only give it a numeric rating, I also gave it a descriptive rating. I chose one word out of a list of about 20 or so words to determine how am I feeling at this milestone of the book. And so you can see 36% of the time I was just feeling this is okay, I guess. Other times I was giving her more of the benefit of the doubt and just saying, hey, here we go. We've got a well-written book here. And you can hear that in my review as I was talking about it. And then there were a few other times where, okay, it's good. I was frustrated. That was probably about here or here. Or it was moving. There was a moment, I guess, where I said it was moving. There was one time that I said, okay, this is moving. Maybe it was happening around here. So that's the data, you guys. I'm going to have more of these coming later with more books that I read. I'm going to collect this data for every book I read to output dashboards like this for you. Let's jump back over to Review Zim. Okay, guys, wrapping up, you saw my score. 7 out of 10 for Avni Doshi's Burnt Sugar, also known as Girl in White Cotton. 7 out of 10. This is likely going to the shortlist. What I'd love for all of you to do, there's a poll in the description down below. Hit that poll. Give us the 6 books that you think are going to make the shortlist. Even if you haven't read them all, just go down there based on the reviews you've watched or the concepts and themes that you've heard talked about around these books. Go ahead and submit your prediction. We've got like 8 days, 9 days before the shortlist is released. We're trying to compile a prediction so that we can have a dashboard similar to the data I just showed you on Burnt Sugar. Hit that poll because it's Booker Boy versus the internet. We are representing the internet with our poll. Booker Boy is trying to come at us full force with his predictions, and he thinks he can beat out our predictions, that more of the books he predict will be on the short list than the books that we predict. So come on, internet, let's use data. Let's make this a man versus machine where machine crushes Booker Boy. We've got to show the world. Leave me a comment, a like, subscribe, all that jazz. Tell me if you read the book and thought differently. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm right. Tell me what you think. You guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.